your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Trick or treat!
Okay, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to the weekly horoscope. And this is, for all horror fans, our favorite time of year. Here we are in late October. You got horror movies on every channel. You got decorations throughout the neighborhoods. This episode is simply titled Happy Halloween. So happy Halloween, Matt, and I look forward to a couple of Halloween-based movies we're going to talk about here this week.
Yeah, happy Halloween, Jerry. I can't wait. This is my favorite time of year.
Yesterday, the lady that lives across the street from me mentioned I was getting the mail, and she happened to mention that the zombie ladies moving around on my front porch freak her out every night. And I'm like, good, thank you.
Good.
I don't think she meant it as a compliment, but that's how I took it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be like, that they work.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. That's a great
All
compliment.
right. So, yeah, no, it's every year you start to see the commercials coming out and you're like, oh my God, here we go. Like every channel, every night, there's something horror based to watch, which is fantastic. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Halloween movies is an easy category to draw from. It's a deep well, and we got a couple good ones. I really like our selection here. The first movie is Trick or Treat from 2007, directed by Michael Dougherty. And oddly enough, I had not seen this movie prior. Matt, is this something you were familiar with?
Oh yeah. I love this movie. I mean, this is a fun fairy tale like anthology that pays homage to all things Hollywood. I'm Halloween, and it attempts to bring to life a new mascot for Halloween in the past 10 or 15 years, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. And it does so in a really colorful, fun, and brutal way. And I watch it every year.
I was familiar with it. I had just never seen it. I think I've seen clips here and there.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, my favorite thing about it was that it is an anthology, which I like, but it's the format was so different, and that the stories, although separate stories, were all interwoven at the same time, cutting from scene to scene, all living in the same world, which I thought was a very unique spin on it.
Yeah, they do a very good job of doing that and putting them all in the same universe, and for that matter, the same street. And when you go back and watch it multiple times, you'll start to see different characters walking around the street. Like you'll see Principal Wilkins with his box walking down the street, heading home, and you start to see the robot. It's like everything. They include everything in the movie, but you don't know it the first time you're watching it. And when you go back and watch it again, you're like, it's all right there.
Yeah,
and they just have a fun, you can tell they just had fun with the movie.
Yeah, it was very clever, and I noticed it has kind of a creep show sensibility with the bright colors, and even the title screen after the first scene, they kind of go through the titles, and they're all comic based, and it's very creep show like, and I mean that in a good way. It's it's nothing to take too serious, but it's a lot of fun, and it was really well executed. There were certain stories within this movie that I really liked. Some were obviously stronger than others, which is always the case with anthologies. But the whole package was kind of clever.
Yeah, it's very clever. And Mike Dougherty, I believe, when he created the character, he had done, I think, like 10 years before, and it was actually like an animated short that he made with Sam, the little pumpkin head demon. And whenever you go into a Halloween store now, you see like little things of Sam everywhere. He's kind of become this little icon, and it's really cool.
Yeah. I didn't know his name when I first started, and I was taking notes, and I just kept calling him Baghead, and I had to go back and edit my notes when I learned his name. So
and it's you don't realize it till the end, but he is the enforcer of the rules of Halloween. So wherever there's something going on, he kind of shows up to make sure that the rules are being followed, which kind of pays homage to a lot of the pagan mythology of warding off spirits, and you have to do XYZ on this night to keep the spirits away, and all these different things. And they kind of take that and run with it in a fun way. Like there's this little demon that's kind of like making sure that everyone's following the rules. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very clever. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go through the narratives individually, but just know that they were these were all running scenes back and forth simultaneously in the same town, same street, same everything.
That's very smart. I'm glad you're doing that, because if you look at the way my notes are structured, it just goes from one thing to the next, and it's really impossible to keep up.
My notes were the same way, and I'm like, nope, this isn't going to work. Nope, so
it's not going to work.
The opening scene is a couple returning home on Halloween, and as they're kind of wrapping up the night, they appear to have had partaken in some adult beverages, and like he's ready to pass out, and she says he's going to sleep till noon. The first thing that struck me is like, well, look, there's still kids walking the street. Is it like 8 o'clock at night and this guy shot? Like, amateur.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think he partied a little too hard. They have this thing in the downtown square. It's almost like this Mardi Gras thing. And so I think these kind of, I think he got a little too drunk, and she's kind of like fed up, like, well, I'm just going to clean up and you can just go inside. And he's like, all right.
They argue over blowing out the jack-o'-lantern. She's going to put it out. And he's like, that's bad luck. But he goes inside and passes out, and Emma starts taking down the decorations, and their yard is full of crosses with sheets thrown over them that look like ghosts. So she starts pulling them down, and finally, as she grabs one, something inside the sheet attacks her. It puts the sheet over the top of her, and it's fighting with her, and we see blood as it stabs her and drags her away. And the man then wakes up, and he staggers outside looking for her, and he's looking around, and he's calling for her, and then he sees one of the ghosts hanging up has blood running out of it. So he pulls the sheet and sees his wife basically hung up on this cross-like structure, very biblical, and then it cuts to the opening credits. So it's just kind of a real
she has
introduction there.
Yeah, it's the quick introduction, and she has the trademark. The weapon that Sam uses is like the lollipop, and it's jammed in her mouth, because that's what he does. He takes a bite off the lollipop and stabs people.
Yeah, makes a sharp edge out of it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and so like I said, this is all intermixed. But the next story that they really delve into, Charlie is somewhat a heavy kid, and he's got a real bad attitude, and he's walking around town, and he's vandalizing the pumpkins, and he's stealing bowls of candy whenever people leave out, the take one sign. And he gets caught by Principal Wilkins.
Who you don't know is Principal Wilkins. They don't tell you that at the beginning, which is actually part of the cleverness of this movie. You don't find out until after he commits the murders that one of the kids goes, Principal Wilkins, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And so he makes him sit with him, and he's telling him about the traditions of Halloween and how he should honor the traditions. And he gives him a candy, and the boy sitting next to him suddenly starts, and the lighting was unique. I wrote down, he starts vomiting all down the front of the steps and down the front of himself, and I wrote down chocolate ? Blood ? It was really hard to tell, and when I looked up the description, it said it was a mix of both. So.
Yeah, I think it's the grossest part of the movie. I'm one of those people, I see people throw up and it makes me gag. And I would have rather just watched his head get beat in. Because they have the sound effect, and it's like going and it's like gallons. I'm like, all right, guys.
Yeah, he vomits a ridiculous amount of bloody chocolate. Yeah. And Principal Wilkins tells him that, one of the rules you should have paid attention to is always check your candy.
Yeah, and he's just real sinister about it.
So he's he carries him inside, and he's got blood on him, and it's a kind of humorous where the doorbell keeps ringing, and he's trying to handle the body, but then he has to answer the door and take care of trick-or-treaters, and he's got blood all over him, and they're like, wow, cool costume, Principal Wilkins. And he's like, oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, he realizes that he has like the blood and the suit and tie, and I love the stressed out serial killer. Like it's very comedic. Like he just killed someone in cold blood, and he's stressed out about the door.
Yeah, and then he keeps getting distracted. He takes the body out into the backyard, and apparently he killed somebody else because he's got two bodies. Yeah, and he's trying to bury it, and now the neighbor comes out and is looking at him through the fence, Mr. Krieg. And he's disturbing him. And then his son, Billy, starts yelling out his upstairs window that he wants help carving the jack-o'-lanterns, and he always needs help with the eyes. and he's just like flustered and like, the one bag that he has wrapped up is moving around and rustling, and he ends up beating it with the shovel until it's dead or quiet. And then he finally goes inside, and he's done with burying the bodies, and he's ready to carve the jack-o'-lanterns with his son. And he gets real creepy, and he's like saying like negative stuff about his son. And you see him pick up a big knife, and he tells the kid to go down to the basement, and he's standing over him with the big knife, and you hear a thunk as the knife goes into flesh, and you're thinking, yeah, he didn't just stab his son. And then they cut, and the jack-o'-lantern they're working on is Charlie's head, and the boy is totally into it, and he's just a little kid, and he's like, yeah, I always need help with the eyes, and it's like end of sequence.
Yeah, the dad loves his son after all. Like, he's complaining about him. It's almost like it kind of reminds me of like a Simpsons Treehouse horror parody. Like they kind of throw you off completely. And like he's when the Principal Wilkins is he's trying to like bury the child, the child he just killed. He's like mocking his son. He's like, I wish mom was still alive. Like, it's like, oh, he killed the wife too.
Yeah. And the only glimpse we get, or one of the glimpses we get, is as he's going back inside to help his son. We see Krieg, his neighbor, his miserable neighbor, is like banging on his window asking for help, and he flips him off, and then we see Krieg pulled away.
And that's all we know. Just like,
yeah. And that's a story that we come back to, and like we talked about, everything is tied in the same world. Mm-hmm. In fact, the second story, and this may be my favorite actually, the group of kids who interrupted him with their trick-or-treating at his house, they're going around town collecting jack-o'-lanterns. And they don't know, they don't say why, but they're putting them all in a cart, and they need to get a certain number.
They say it's for school. They say it was for a school project.
Yeah.
That's about as vague. It's vague. It's vague, though. It's like,
which we know it's not, but right.
Right. Yeah.
They end up meeting up with this autistic savant named Rhonda, and the leader of the group is this mouthy girl named Macy, and she just seems mean. And she leads them all to an old quarry where she tells the story of a group of mentally handicapped children that were driven off the bus, their bus was driven off the cliff of the quarry because their parents were tired of dealing with them and were ashamed of them, and they paid off the bus driver to put an end to the kids. And they show the flashback, and all the kids are chained. They all have costumes on. It's a pretty cool visual, and they're all chained in their seats like criminals.
Yeah,
and the bus driver goes along, and he's dropping a candy in each one of their buckets, and he's about to let the bus go off the cliff. But while he's doing this, a kid in a Dracula costume gets free and goes to the front of the bus and drives it off with the bus driver still in it. So Macy tells this story and says, we got to go down there and honor these kids, and we're bringing a jack-o'-lantern for each kid. So we got 8 of them. And it's a quarry, and there's an old exterior metal elevator that goes down the side of the quarry and takes them down to where, all the gravel is and where the water is. So the first 3 go down, and they leave Chip, the little brother, and Rhonda up there. And then they send the keys back up.
The keys would have went back up. My pumpkin would have been right there, and I would have been gone.
Yeah. Well, as they start to go back down, all the jack-o'-lantern lights that they could see on their journey down the elevator start getting extinguished, and they hear the kids just screaming. And when they get down there, as they try to look and see what's going on, all these dead kids start walking through the area. And there's even, she turns and runs, and she sees one of them is just eating Chip's entrails. And she's running, and she's screaming, and she falls. And it was all a gag. Everyone was in on it except for her. They're all wearing masks. Chip, it was the fake entrails that they're all pulling out, and they all got.
Yeah, he's got them like on his shoulders and stuff. Like, it was just a joke. Like, it's like, well, where'd you guys get these costumes?
But the one kid, the one guy is actually usually nice to her, and
Schrader. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, she's really upset, and come on, guys, that's enough. That's enough. And as they start to collect themselves, and Macy's mad because she wanted the gag to go further. The real dead kids emerge from the water and start stalking the whole group. And Rhonda has the keys to the elevator, and we cut to her on the elevator with the doors shut, and everyone's banging on it, saying, "Let us in, let us in, let us in," and she just raises it up, leaving the others to their fate.
Yeah, she goes like this. She just waves goodbye. She's looking down on him, like, nope.
And when she reaches the top, she just walks away, and there's Sam walking the other direction, like his peripheral involvement in all the stories. And they kind of give each other the acknowledging nod as they walk past each other, which I thought was kind of cool.
The rules were followed, and he's like, okay, well, you took care of that for me.
Yeah. Our next storyline is a group of young girls, and they're all dressed as fairy tale characters, and they're scantily clad, and they're almost like the stereotypical Halloween dress slutty,
Yeah.
Except for one girl, and they kind of make fun of her. They call her, she's the virgin, she's
she's dressed as Red
Riding Hood.
Red Riding Hood, yeah.
Which becomes appropriate. So the other girls, they pick up dates. Lori is the prude, and she doesn't really fit in, but they're going to a party in the woods, and they easily pick up dates, and they take them all out there. But Lori doesn't have a date yet, and she's even not sure she wants to go, so she stays in town at the festival. And
I have fun fact actually. When the girls are in the store in the opening scene, when they're changing, there's a kid that tries to peep in on them changing, and one of the women pushes him away. That's the actor that plays Sam.
The kid?
Yeah, that's the same kid. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's even in the anthology within the anthology. Yeah.
Peeping Sam.
Peeping Sam. Yeah.
Oh, that is cool. I didn't know that. That's yeah. Hey, take your bag off. We got something real for you to do.
Yeah, we got a scene for you to do real quick. We're low on actors.
Yeah. You're gonna peep in and watch these girls change. So he's like, yeah, okay. You talk me into it.
Yeah.
So she stays in town. Lori does, and while she's walking around, we see a man dressed as a vampire, and actually bite a woman and make her bleed, and she falls into the alleyway. And so as Lori starts walking, she's done. She's going to meet up with her friends in the woods. The same vampire comes out and like confronts her, and he's going to attack her. And the next thing, we cut to the party, and we see a body fall from the trees and just land in the middle of the party, and it's in a Red Riding Hood, the hood part.
Yeah, it's like wrapped up like a shroud. It just like drops from the trees, it's all bloody and mangled.
And the girls go over and roll it over, and it's the guy with the vampire mask. And it's like, okay, this girl was not to be trifled with, apparently.
Yeah. And she says it too. She says it when she's walking down the trail. She yells. She hears like twigs in the background, like she can tell someone's behind her. She's like, "I'm not playing around tonight." Yeah. But she has this innocent demeanor the whole time. So maybe she's just trying to defend herself, and they kind of throw you off on what's going on.
So they tell her, "It's your time, Lori. It's your time." And she gets over and pulls the mask off, and we find out it's Principal Wilkins. And then she transforms, and all the girls start transforming. And interesting werewolf transformation. I'd never seen one quite like this.
It's very unique.
Yeah. They actually grow and pull off the human skin, rather than you think of a Rick Baker werewolf transformation. This is completely different, but it kind of worked.
Yeah, it's really gruesome, but it's a cool practical effect. Like it's almost like they're taking off the skin, like as if it's like a wetsuit. Yeah. Like they're just ripping it off, and it comes off, and it's all stretchy and gooey. It's just coming off, and under them is like, under that skin is like the werewolf. That's what they are. I thought it was really unique.
Yeah, it's like sloughing it off like in pieces, and it was different. I like it. It would try to be different, but the girls, all their dates are dead. You see them all sitting around with sliced throats or whatever, and The girls are all werewolves.
There's a hot dog. What I couldn't. This movie makes me laugh. There's a guy in a hot dog outfit.
Yeah,
because every party has to have that, and they're just rolling him.
Yeah, he tumbles down the little hill. Like the Oscar Mayer Wiener guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So the werewolf women all feast on their dates. Lori, it's her first time, and she devours Principal Wilkins. And Sam is in the woods, watching them all.
He's just hanging out. His feet are like dangling while he's sitting down.
Yeah, it's like a good show for him.
Yeah.
Then we go back to our neighbor, Principal Wilkins' neighbor's Krieg. He doesn't give out candy. When people knock on his door, he scares them off with his dog. He's got lights that he puts on his dog's head, and the dog runs out in the dark and he barks like crazy, but he's just a tiny little dog.
It's a little Spuds McKenzie dog.
Yeah, and it scares all the kids away. So he's not in the Halloween spirit, and we know people usually pay for that.
He just sits there and drinks, and whatever's on TV, if it's Halloween, he changes it to something else. He ends up just watching info commercials.
Yeah. He goes out to the front of his house and is surprised to find dozens of lit jack-o'-lanterns decorating his house that he didn't put there. And he's like, he's reacting kind of strange. He goes inside and he hears little footsteps upstairs. So he goes up to check it out, and it's actually a pretty tense scene. He's looking around, and he's like, there's like writing on the wall in blood, like Halloween phrases. And while he's looking around, Sam from under the bed slices his Achilles.
Yeah.
And
he trips and falls. It's gnarly.
Yeah, and he tries to get away, and he falls down the steps and into a pile of candy laced with razor blades.
And broken glass. Yeah, he falls down. So he puts his hands down to get his broken glass and razor blades everywhere.
Yeah, it's like a take on the check your candy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Sam comes down and they start fighting. And even though Sam's small, he's obviously some supernatural being. But during their struggle, Krieg manages to pull his bag off, and his head underneath is basically a deformed jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, he's just like a demon jack-o'-lantern thing.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And he manages to get his shotgun pointed at him and shoots him. And like pumpkin filling comes out.
I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I didn't see that coming the first time I watched the movie. It's just, it's just all, he keeps shooting him. It's just pumpkin filling. So it's like, what are you going to do to this thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's laying there and you don't know, is he dead? Was he ever alive? But he's kind of laying in the corner. And Krieg goes to call 911 and the line gets ripped out of the wall. And a crawling hand comes along and sticks a knife through his foot. And the hand crawls up to Sam and reattaches to Sam. And they move in on Krieg now. And he bites his pumpkin sucker, and he's got the sharp edges, and he swings it at him. But rather than stab him, it sticks into a candy bar that was in his pocket or resting on his chest. Sam picks it up and starts eating the candy bar off the sucker, and leaves as if he's satisfied.
Yeah, he got his candy.
And we see some pictures burning in the fire that Krieg was getting rid of, and we realized that he was the bus driver from the bus crash all those years ago. So trick-or-treaters show up to his house a little while later, and he's bandaged. He looks like he's been through a war, and he actually gives out candy this time. Like maybe he's come around and he's going to embrace the spirit of Halloween. But the next knock on his door is all the undead children from the bus, and they come in to tear him apart.
Yeah.
And Sam is watching all this from across the street. And, when his view, he turns, and this is where he sees Emma and the original couple coming home and extinguishing the candle. It's a complete full circle moment. And now we know that he's the one who got her and made her pay for blowing out the candle.
That's what he does. He goes around on Halloween and he enforces the rules. The guy wasn't the bus driver wasn't handing out candy. He was like, "You're gonna hand out candy." When he finally gets it from him, he's like, "All right, you're good. I'll go on to the next thing."
Yeah,
he just goes around town doing that.
Yeah, in we talk about the era of elevated horror, quote unquote, and this is more of a throwback to the fun. It's goofy, doesn't take itself too seriously, um, and I couldn't believe that I had never seen it before, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable fun. It's colorful. It's not like it's real fun. I watch it every year this time of year, and it's just one of those movies that it just became a classic. I like the anthologies and I like how creative they are with it, and I think I'd like to see them do another one. I think I read somewhere the other day that they're trying to come up with a sequel to it. I mean, it's been like 15 years.
Yeah, yeah, 2007. I did see when I was searching, I did see a Trick or Treat too, so I don't know if it ever happened.
It hasn't yet. This movie, they filmed it in 2007, and they kind of put it on the independent circuit, and it was put on the shelves for 2 years. They didn't know what to do with it because the company that did it, they had like Superman Returns, they had the Saw movie 4 was coming out, they had all these movies, and they didn't know what to do with it. And this movie didn't actually get released till 2009. And so it just kind of sat on the shelves and didn't know what to do with it. And as soon as it came out, it just kind of became this instant classic. So I was like graduating college when this movie came out, and I remember like seeing it, and I was like, whoa.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, if you haven't
Something
seen
different.
it's definitely fits the category and definitely is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Our second film on the list is a real natural fit for this category. Um, we talked about going with the original, but want to kind of stay a little bit modern. We decided to go with Halloween from 2018, directed by David Gordon Green. And this movie is a direct sequel to the original 1978 classic that ignores everything in between.
Yeah, it pays homage. It pays homage to all of the films that they made. But yeah, they're kind of like retconning everything. They're kind of just like resetting it all.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at some of the quality of some of the ones in between, it was probably a wise decision because it really drew direct lines from the original. It really brought the mythology into it. It really just updated it into a modern setting. And you think about it, it was 40 years between the original and this soft reboot, direct sequel, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think it's very well done. And actually, upon rewatching it, it made me angrier at Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends because this reboot set the bar pretty high. I honestly think it's my second favorite, only to the original in the entire series. It's that good.
Yeah, the cinematography is 100% top notch. The score in this movie is top notch. A lot of things they do with characters I really liked. There's the saying, the older I get, the less absolutes I have, but the absolutes I do have are more absolute. And I kind of feel that way about this movie. The more I watch it, the things I like about it, I like more. And the things I don't like about it, I like even less.
Hmm.
I can't stand the dialogue in this movie. I think they put in too much humor. There's this director that did Pineapple Express and wrote this with Danny McBride, and there's just too much of that. The more I watch it, I'm like, there's too much of that. I think a lot of the stuff that they said in some of the scenes was just unnecessary, didn't have to be said, kind of contradicted some of the stuff. But outside of that, there's one character in the movie I just didn't really find to be that necessary. I would have liked Jamie Lee Curtis. Like Laurie Strode should have been more in the movie, in my opinion. Outside of a couple of those nitpicky things, I think this movie's great. I've seen it a bunch of times. I love it. I love the cinematography. I love all the kills. I love what they did with Michael Myers. I like the mask, the costume that they brought back. I think it's not brought back, but it's one of the best ones since the original. This movie does a lot of good things that I really like, but it does some things that just make me. I wish if this movie could have been even better. If I think some of the dialogue, I think really just frustrates me.
Well, it's funny when this came out, and this has a high rating on IMDb and on Rotten Tomatoes, etc. people were so excited and so thrilled, and they generally liked the results. So it's like, well, this David Gordon Green is really somebody to pay attention to, and to point to your flaws. And again, I think I liked the movie maybe more than you did, but
I liked it. I just there's things in it that just kind of frustrate me. I think it should have taken itself more serious.
Drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Like it was the most pointless entry. It existed only to get between this reboot and the end. And then I thought the end was disappointing in every way it tried to be.
Yeah, well, the reason that is because the way they end this movie, Halloween 2018, they should have just ended it right there. But they've set it up to just kind of do the same thing all over again. And it's like, so where are we going from here? You know what I mean? Like we've done this before in the other Halloweens. Like they kind of show him dying at the end at the bottom of the little barricade that he was in, the little trap. And it's like, okay, so where are we like? Didn't he rise above the rubble like 2 or 3 times? Like, what are we doing? Like, we're just going to keep doing this? Like, so I think they set it up to be a failure. You know what I mean? Like, they should have just ended it there, but they want to milk the cow and make a trilogy out of it.
And they kept making money, but I agree. It would have been a great ending if it ended the way it did.
Yep.
And actually,
or change it.
The confrontation between Laurie and Michael that this movie builds up to, that she's been waiting 40 years for, is better than the confrontation they have in Halloween Ends.
It is. Yeah, it's perfect.
So everything beyond this is anticlimactic.
Absolutely. And I agree 100%. And I really do. I do really enjoy this movie a lot. I'm not trying to knock it, but I'm critically looking at it. There are things that could have been done way better. It could have really elevated its iconic status. It's still a good movie. There's just certain things that they say in the dialogue. Like there's a lot of the stuff, like the boyfriend comes in, they have a dinner date with the dad, and then he's just gone for the rest of the movie. Like what happened to the boyfriend? I mean, there's certain things that, like, she tells her daughter, Laurie tells her daughter, like, I'm sorry I raised you this way to be afraid and fight a killer. In the middle of them fighting a killer, it's like, actually, you're perfectly vindicated for what you did, because you're doing the thing you trained her for.
Yeah, you should.
Why are you apologizing now? You shouldn't be apologizing now. Like what? That line made no sense to me. I'm like, why is she saying this now while they're fighting him? I got. There was just a lot of stuff that just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, whoa. The doctor, that was having the evil doctor come in and then he's just gone. I was like, what? The podcaster guy, like, he's like, oh, we got the mask from the DA. He's like, oh, they just turned the evidence over to you. Like, they just turned it, a podcaster, and you're going to walk it into the penitentiary and show. That made no sense to me. There were things but again, I'm just nitpicking.
No, I get you. And that's kind of basically our opening scene. These investigative journalists, they visit Michael at the institution he's at. He hasn't said a word in 40 years. And again, this ignores anything that happened after the original Halloween. And the male podcaster or journalist, they go out and visit him out in the yard, and he's standing in his assigned square, and they can't go in the square, and the guy walks right up to the edge of it. And I thought this was a really well done scene.
I actually love the opening. Like the way the cinematography is absolutely fantastic. It's top notch.
Particularly this scene. I thought this was like the most beautiful shot scene.
When he's yelling and they cut right into the music, I got chills. I was like, yeah, this is it. Yeah.
So he's talking to Michael, who's ignoring him, and he brings out the mask, and he's holding it up, and he's trying to get a reaction out of Michael. And all the other inmates or prisoners or patients who are out in the yard, and they're all separated in these huge cubes, start going bananas. And then all the guard dogs start barking. And then the alarm starts going off. It's just a very unnerving scene. It really ratchets the intensity up, and like nothing's even happened yet. And it's like, okay, this is a great opening.
And just before that, the doctor is talking about the new Loomis, as they call him. He's talking about how he's pure evil, right? And so, like, then all this stuff starts. It's very harrowing, like all this stuff starts to happen.
Yeah. So our same journalists, they go to visit Laurie, which her place is like locked down, gated, like a push button talk, high security, not a fancy place, but she's got it completely locked down. And
this was another part I had problem with the dialogue. He gets up there, Aaron, the podcaster Aaron, he gets up there and he starts like mumbling. He doesn't know how to introduce himself. It's like, you're a professional interviewer.
Yeah.
And suddenly you don't know how to introduce yourself. Like he just, I don't know, the character, the dialogue to me, it was so inconsistent, the whole movie.
Yeah. They pay her $3,000 to talk to them, and she lets him in. And we find out she had a strained relationship with her daughter Karen, and struggles with the relationship with her granddaughter Allison. And she's become a bit of an odd recluse. She secures herself. She trains. She's shooting guns and shooting targets. Very, very Sarah Connor-ish.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote the same thing down. Yeah, she's like a hoarder kind of,
Yeah,
but like
survivalist, and like
survivalist.
She's lost a connection with real life. Her life has been overtaken by the experiences 40 years ago, and she's never been able to let go of them.
Which is a great allegory to the film, right? Like this film is ultimately a lot about how trauma affects family multi-generationally, and they do that really well.
And I think the series, one of the best parts about this trilogy is they do actually, and even in the third one, which I didn't like the direction it took, but it actually spends a lot of time on not just the trauma inflicted on Lori, but on the whole town. Like there's not a person in the town who wasn't affected by what happened and isn't still affected to some degree. That's one thing I thought they did very well. And they touch on it throughout this movie, as well.
Yeah, and I wish we kind of got more Lori, to be honest, but I mean, it is what it is. So.
Yeah, more Lori is always going to be a winner. Like the second one in the trilogy has almost no Lori.
I know.
What are you doing?
It was frustrating. Yeah. I didn't know either. Yeah.
So these journalists tell Lori that they think, well, Michael will probably talk to you. We'd like to have the two of you sit down face to face. And she's not very fond of that idea, and she throws them both out. So
yeah, he kind of acts like the modern idiot.
Yeah, you would think that she would want to do that. Who would think that? So Lori shows up.
Well, he just wants ratings. He just wants.
Of course. Yeah, but still, I guess you can try, but that just seems like a zero chance of success idea.
It kind of goes back to the silly dialogue. He's like, "Don't you want to free your mind and confront him?" It's like, this isn't kindergarten class where she was bullied. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, no one wants to sit down with Charles Manson and be like, "Hey, man, you hurt my feelings when you killed my family." You know what I mean? Like, no one wants to do that.
Yeah, so that doesn't go anywhere. We see Allison really wants to have a relationship with her grandmother, and her grandmother meets her outside of school one day and gives her the $3,000, says use it towards college or whatever you want, and just don't tell your mother. And she asks her grandmother why she can't just move on, and she says she's preparing for Michael's return. And it's almost like a religious thing where, waiting for the second
Messiah to return.
Yeah, and it's just like she's obsessed with it. And we find out that Michael is being transferred, and Lori's aware, and she decides to go and sit outside the facility, and she watches the bus pull out. And then she goes to meet her family for dinner. And we said her relationship with her family is very rocky. And after seeing the bus pull out, she shows up and she's very unnerved. She grabs a glass of wine and starts chugging it. She kind of makes a scene. And her daughter Karen's like, this is why we don't, invite you to things. And she ends up running out of the restaurant. And Allison chases her and hugs her. And Allison goes back in, and apparently for the first time ever, her mom has started telling her how she grew up, shooting guns and training and surrounded by this lunacy. And the authorities took her at age 12, away from her mother, which seems like she should have heard all this by now. But
again, yeah,
it's, it was for our benefit. But you're like, you're really just telling her this for the first time?
Yeah, I don't know why they injected that and just didn't make it part of the story that the daughter already knew.
Yeah.
It seemed really unnecessary to me, but the plot moves forward. So
yep. We see a man and his son, and they're kind of cool characters, although they're not in it long. But the son's telling his dad how he wants to go fishing on the weekends, but he's really into dance and he doesn't want to miss dance class. And it was kind of a cool interaction. He seemed like a cool kid, and his dad's like, he's like, I love spending time with you, Dad. I'm really into the dancing, and I want to do it. And he's like, okay. He's like, yeah, I'll go fishing with you on weekends, but during the week I gotta dance.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You can tell the kid is kind of going to out intellectualize his father at some point, but the father doesn't know how to bond with him. It was interesting. It was, I mean, that scene was cool. Yeah.
He may have already out intellectualized.
It kind of seemed like he was like, yeah, this kind of hurts me. He's like confronting him like an adult, and Dad's like, I don't, my dad used to just beat me. Like, you know, he kind of just has that old school.
Me man, me fish.
Yeah, just come on. Yeah, this is how we bond.
Yeah.
But he's well intentioned,
Well, as they're driving, they come upon a bus crash, and we see patients wandering in the road. And the dad says, "Wait here, call the cops, and I'm going to check it out." And the dad doesn't come back, so the kid gets he's got his hunting rifle out of the truck, and he's looking around, and he looks in the bus and accidentally shoots Dr. Sartain, who is a student of Dr. Loomis's and the primary caregiver for Michael. And he was riding along to make sure the transfer went smoothly.
Yeah, he jumped out. Like, you ever go to a shooting range and like the cardboard pieces jump out? That's what he did. Instead of holding his hands up and saying, "Hey, I'm like warning," he just jumps out.
If you ever play those video games where
but yes, the shooting
can't shoot the wrong people. I always shoot the wrong people. I'm in mode of I'm shooting
everybody. If it's breathing, I'm shooting.
Yeah, you pop up with my gun pointed at, I'm shooting.
Yeah.
So I do terrible at those ones where they throw miscellaneous people you're not supposed to shoot, and that's what this kid did.
Yep.
He got him in the shoulder, and so he's scared. He runs back to the car where, unfortunately, Michael is waiting for him, and kills the kid.
Bare hands, just a barehanded choke. I mean, I know it's not just, but I mean, like, yeah, it's pretty vicious.
The cops arrive and they find the bus driver, or a man leaning against the bus, and in something I don't think I've seen quite like this before. His head was snapped straight back. Like the back of his head was touching the back of his neck or the back of his spine, and his neck was elongated in the front. I'd never quite seen a neck broken like that in a movie.
It was pretty brutal.
It was unique, and they didn't show it, but they showed the results of it.
They do a lot of off-killing in this movie, which I mean, I'm a fan of that. I like the mystery behind it. Like, you walk in a room and there's 3 dead bodies, and it's like, oh, Michael Myers was here. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of like how it sets the setting like that. It's kind of, sets the tension.
Yeah, there's a scene later on where he just walks into a woman's house and just grabs her and starts smashing her on the kitchen table, and the camera kind of follows him as he goes into the kitchen, and he goes around the edge, and we hear the screaming and the bashing, and then the camera catches up and we see the woman's head splattered on the table. We didn't see it splatter. We see the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene in the entire movie. That sequence where they follow him around town, where he's like following the trick-or-treaters and goes into 2 people's houses. That's my favorite part of the movie. I feel like that captures the essence of him being a serial killer better than anything else. Just randomly, ruthlessly, just there's no point to it. Like, he just kind of walks in, takes the hand, and they also have a really good tension when he's walking out of that woman's house. You hear a baby crying. He's walking towards the crib, and they're like, "Oh no, they're not going to do this, are they?" And he stops at the baby's crib. You're like, "Oh no!" And then he just keeps walking. They're like, "All right."
Thought the same thing. Our favorite journalists are they're visiting the grave of Judith Myers, who is Michael's sister, who he killed in the original, and Michael is watching them from the trees. And the couple they stop at a gas station, and the woman uses the restroom, or the loo as she calls it. And the man goes inside to pay, and everyone is dead. The man at the counter is dead. He goes into the garage, and the man in the garage is dead.
His clothes are missing, so he's missing a mechanic jumpsuit.
Yes. Yeah. So Michael got out of his psychiatric wardrobe and got the old jumpsuit on. We cut back to the woman in the bathroom, and Michael's boots come up to the stall she's in, and he just scatters a bunch of broken and bloody teeth on the floor at her feet. And she can't see him. She can see his feet because he's outside of the stall. She's in the stall.
Yeah.
But then he attacks. He starts bashing down the door, and she's trying to crawl away and it's a filthy bathroom. She's crawling on the floor trying to get to other stalls.
And Aaron runs in to help her.
Yeah, he comes in like he's like, Michael, and then Michael just takes him and starts bashing his head into the doors and the walls, and he's just a mess.
I love the kills in this movie. I think they did Michael Myers right. As much as I nitpick about certain things, there's things about this movie, like I said, that I love, and I loved a lot of the kills they did. It was simple. A lot of it's just simple,
Hey man, and he just picks up the woman and chokes her out. We see her feet off the ground while you hear, and he goes back outside. He opens their trunk, and he retrieves his mask, and he puts it on. It's
in slow motion when he puts it on, like it's cool as it gets cool scene.
yeah, like a superhero becoming.
Yeah.
And
Back in Black. Yeah,
Lori always listening to she got the news on, and she has the police scanners on, and she hears about the bus crash, and she goes into action. And this is where we just see Michael. Now he's put his mask on, and it's kind of dusk now. It's gotten dark, and there's trick-or-treaters, and he's just walking through town. And I saw a thing on the internet that said, showed a guy with like a knife and blood all over his truck, and it said Halloween is the absolute best time to get away with a murder. And that's kind of exactly what Michael does. He just walks amongst all these dressed up people.
It's kind of like the concept of the original, right? That's kind of where it all came from.
Yeah. He just walks into the houses and just starts killing people, as we kind of touched on. It's pointless. It's senseless. He has no vendetta against these people. He just, here's a door. Here's a person. I'm walking in and I'm killing him.
It's pure evil, as they say. He's just pure evil. He's nothing. He doesn't speak. He doesn't talk. There's no psychological analysis that's ever going to happen. It's just pure evil.
Yeah. So now Lori's in action. She's driving around. She did some things at her house, and she's listening on the scanner. We see Allison is at the party that she was going to, and you talked about, she got in the fight with her boyfriend. She walks back in from talking to Vicky, and he's kissing another girl, and he's saying he's drunk and he drank too much, and they fight, and he takes her phone and he throws it in.
Minutes ago, they were in love. Yeah, they were in love, and they were lovey-dovey, and they were having dinner with the parents, and now he threw her phone. I just didn't get it. I didn't.
Yeah, it's funny because the dad mentions that he comes from a family that was questionable.
Partied. Yeah,
but we saw nothing from the kid other than he was, respectful and really cared about her, and then he drank too much and didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. It was out of left field for me, but it was moving the plot forward so she wouldn't have a phone. So
so she didn't have a phone.
Yeah.
So she leaves with another friend, a mutual guy friend, and she's going home, or she's going to see her friend Vicky. Vicky is babysitting this really wisecracking, kind of funny kid named Julian, and he's in bed and he sees something outside of his room in the hall. And he's asking for help. And this scene is very tense. She goes up and she's looking around and she's slowly opening, closets and doors, and it's kind of edge of your seat. It very much in my mind is homage to the original, because that was the kind of tension Carpenter built in the first one, and it was really echoed in this. She's babysitting. It's got the cat and mouse, and you're on the edge of your seat. It very much was a tribute to the original, I thought.
I had the same thing in my notes because he was the babysitter killer, wasn't he? That's kind of what it was. Laurie was babysitting in the first one. So he was. Yeah, it was very homage to the original. Like you said, it's like there's nothing in your room, and like then they kind of like there's a trough where there's like no tension. It's like, okay, maybe there wasn't, and then there is. Like they kind of it's like you said, it kind of bounces back and forth, and it's really well done.
Yeah, she's trying to close his closet door and it won't shut. It's like keeps hitting something, and it's like, what is this? And it's Michael Myers.
Then you get the music again. The musical score is top notch.
Yeah. So the cops show up, and Lori shows up because she's listening on the police scanner, and she's outside, and she looks up in the window, and she sees Michael, and Michael sees her, and it's kind of this moment, like, okay, we've been building towards this. Now they're aware of each other's presence, and it's on.
Yeah,
and
it would have been funny if if like Lori, like Michael Myers sees Lori and just doesn't recognize her, and like the whole time she was traumatized over him and obsessing over him, and he's like, I don't remember you.
Yeah, what are you doing, lady? Yeah, but they have this connection, telepathically, psychically, something. Yeah, so he comes out and Laurie shoots him in the shoulder. But it's Michael Myers. That doesn't mean anything to him. He keeps going on. So Laurie gets her family. She gets Karen and her husband Ray, but nobody can get a hold of Alice, and she doesn't have the phone. Nobody can find her. As she's walking home with her friend, the friend is also drunk and stupid, and he tries hitting on her, and she walks away from him. And when she does, Michael kills him and impales him on a wrought iron fence in a kind of a cool scene. And she sees it.
Great cinematography right there with the lights flashing, and the lights would flash off, go doot, doot, like they'd shut off and he'd disappear, and then they'd turn back on again, and Michael Myers would be somewhere else. I thought that scene was filmed amazing. I love it.
Yeah. So she sees her dead friend and sees Michael at the edge of the fence, and it's like, oh my God, everything my grandmother said is true. Mm-hmm. So she runs for help, and she's just screaming and running. And finally, the cop picks her up, and he has Dr. Sartain in the car with him. And they're okay, you're safe, you're with us. And as they start to leave, Michael's in the road. And the cop is the original cop who showed up on the scene first in 1978.
Will Patton, yeah.
And I don't think it was Will Patton 40 years ago.
No. Yeah.
He's playing the character.
Hawkins, yeah.
Yeah, Hawkins is the cop. And he stopped Dr. Loomis from killing Michael. And so he feels like this is now his responsibility because he let it happen. So he actually runs Michael down with the car. And he hits him hard, and Michael's laying in the street. And you think, okay, we know this isn't it for Michael, but Sartain goes out and he's like checking him. And what he does is pull a switcheroo and stab the cop. And he doesn't want anything bad to happen to Michael.
He wants to keep studying him. He wants to see him in his natural environment, and he needs to see what happens when he confronts Laurie. So he has to set this up,
which is, they've been studying him for 40 years, and he hasn't said a peep. But he thinks, seeing him out in the wild, as he calls it, will produce a different result. So
the way I interpret, one of the ways I interpret this, or I have to interpret this, or else it doesn't make sense, is that anything that comes in contact with Michael Myers is because he's pure evil. It just drives them insane. Yeah. Right. Like look what it did to Laurie Strode, and she only had a couple minutes of interaction with him in the first one. Right. Yeah. Like there's not much interaction. It's kind of like he's able to just through pure evil drive people mad. Right. And so all of the time that this doctor has spent with him, it's driven him into this madness because he's stared into the abyss. Right. And he's become the abyss. He's become the monster.
Yeah. He drags Michael, the doctor does, and puts him, which is pretty impressive considering he got shot in the shoulder just a little while ago. And Michael's a big
like
dude.
6'10".
Yeah. He drags him and puts him in the back seat with Allison. It's a cop car, so she can't get out. Yeah. And, so she's driving away, stuck with a passed out Michael Myers in the back seat with her.
Yeah. Well, I'd have a heart attack.
Michael wakes up and he's not happy, but not turning on Allison. He actually puts his feet and kicks the front seat and starts smashing Sartain against the steering wheel and against the dashboard. Finally gets out, and he drags Sartain outside, and stomps his head into a pulp with his boot. Just one big, just crushes his skull, and it's just like gloop everywhere.
It's like the Rob Zombie-esque like callback to that like kind of gore, you know.
Yeah, just one big powerful stomp, and it just splat.
Yeah, like a pumpkin.
Yeah, exactly. But this gives Allison a chance to escape, and she runs into the woods. We go back to Laurie's house where she is with her family, and a cop car pulls up, and her son-in-law Ray goes out to check with the cops. Hey, how's it going? Well, he opens the car door, and it's just bodies inside, and Michael's there, and he kills him too. So Karen just lost her husband. Karen's now hiding in the basement. Laurie had built this trap door where the a kitchen island swings over and blocks the access to the basement, so it's a secure location. So Karen's hiding in the basement. Laurie's at the front door waiting for Michael to show up. And Michael smashes through the door and grabs her. And she's struggling. He's got her around the neck. He's lifting her up. And she manages to get her shotgun and blow his left hand into bits. Yeah. It's just like hanging pieces of meat when she's done with it. So she gets free. So I thought that was kind of a cool scene because
I did, yeah. And you know, she gets him with the frying pan too at one point. And I always like that because every time I see that in the movie, I'm like, that would kill somebody. Yeah. Like the frying pans are, you know, like cast iron steel, like they won't, and they hit someone in the jaw and they fall back. I'm like, well, they're dead. They won't be in the sequel, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's the one thing I like. That's the one thing that can kind of make them tumble.
Yeah, she runs back down. She goes into the basement with Karen. They're kind of holed up a little bit, and then, you know, she can see Michael through the floorboards, and she pumps a shot through the floor at him, and she thinks she got him. He stops making noise, so she goes upstairs to check, and she can see blood. She can see it on the stairway, and he's on the second floor. She's figured out. So another very tense scene. She goes up looking for him.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's looking at closet doors and there's a bloody handprint. And I'm thinking, I'm just blasting away into that closet.
Like, she's sitting there like, come on out, Michael. Yeah. Like trying to
like slowly open the door. And the tension was great.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I said when we're watching it, I'm like,
right.
I'm just shooting that door.
Just shoot it.
Take any chances.
Yeah. Shoot first, ask questions later, right? Like, you know, like there's no little kid in there. You know what I mean? Like, you know where everyone, like shoot through the door and then open up and see if you hit him. Yeah, I thought the same exact thing.
Yeah. Yeah. He jumps out behind a mannequin. She keeps a bunch of creepy mannequins because she uses them
shooting
for target practice. Yep.
Yeah.
He jumps out behind a mannequin and they fight. And this scene, I thought they did a lot of really cool tiebacks to the original. I thought, and I was
just thinking that.
Yeah. I like how they acknowledged, you know, what they were doing and where, you know, what they were trying to sequelize.
One of my favorite things they did was earlier in the movie when Allison's in school before she gets the money. She's in school and she looks out the window and Laurie, her grandmother's just staring at her from across the street, which is a callback to the original when she's in school and she sees Michael Myers, you know. So I thought that was, they did a lot of cool callbacks like that.
There's even the kids are talking and they said, well, isn't Michael Myers your grandmother's brother?
They put an end to that.
and she's like, no, that's just a dumb rumor that people have started, which is something they got developed in Halloween 2 that didn't make sense.
It didn't. Yeah. That whole thing. Yeah.
Which Carpenter
they got rid of that. They
not want to go that way in the first place, but you know, they wiped that away in one fell swoop. But in the struggle upstairs, Laurie tumbles out of the window and falls off the balcony, and she's on the ground below,
which is a callback to the original, like you said at the end of the first one. Yeah.
Just role reversal.
Yeah.
Allison shows up. She makes it through the woods, and she's going to hide in the basement with her mom. And Michael, you know, sees her come in, and he's kind of distracted for a minute, and then he looks back down at the ground, and Laurie's gone, which is exactly what Laurie experienced
like the first
him.
One.
Yeah. It was. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So Michael is downstairs now, and he's figured out that the room is below the island, and he's using all of his power to try and break the island to get access to it. And he finally manages.
He's like deadlifting it. He's just like lifting it up. I'm like, jeez.
Yeah, he finally manages. I mean, he's a big dude, but his
Massive.
strength becomes unnatural at times. Of course, he manages to break it free, and now you have Karen and Allison in the basement, and Karen's down there, and they're looking up the steps at an opening, and it was a well shot scene that you've mentioned several times. And she's standing there with the gun, and then she's like, and she starts like quivering. She's like, I can't do it. And then Michael steps into the view at the top of the stairs, and she goes, gotcha. And she puts the gun to her shoulder and just blasts away at him.
That's her most redeeming scene in the entire movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as she does it, Laurie comes from behind and stabs Michael. And then hits him with the frying pan.
That's when the frying pan comes in. Yeah.
So he's just got shot, stabbed, and hit with a frying pan, and he goes tumbling down the steps into the basement.
It's a great stunt, by the way, because they show someone actually doing that. I was like, ooh, that was a good stunt. Yeah.
All the way down. And so Karen and Allison now got to get out of the basement, and they scramble up while he's down, and he gets up and manages to get a hold of Karen's ankle, and she can't get it up, and she's screaming. But Allison, without hesitation, grabs the knife and reaches down and cuts his hand, making him release her mom.
Yep.
So they scramble up the rest of the way, and Laurie hits the triggers, and she had this whole thing set up. Steel bars shoot across the opening, making the basement a prison cell, and gas releases start opening up on the wall.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, listen, you're going to break into my compound and come after me. You're not leaving.
So Michael is trapped. You see the gas is running, and Laurie lights a flare, and she throws it down. And Michael's just staring up. He doesn't even move. He's just looking up, helpless, you would think, but just doesn't have anything to do. He's trapped.
He's just emotionally looking up, like, all right, yeah. He's just pure evil looking up, like, all right.
And the girls get out of the house. You quickly see the entire house is in flames, and the girls stagger to the road, and they get a ride in the back of a pickup truck, and it appears they're going to the hospital. They're a little battered and a little bloody, but
a little traumatized, maybe.
Everybody's okay.
Yeah.
And you would think they would have some relief from this. It does seem to be an ending, which we know it's not.
Yeah.
But in the context and in the confines of this particular movie, it's wrapped up well.
It is. If you want to have a really good marathon Halloween night, watch the original and watch this one, and there you go. I think it works like that.
Yeah. So again, violent, brutal. Some of the most brutal kills are off scene, but it's still, you don't ever walk away thinking, man, I didn't get to see any kills in this movie.
No, it's a mixed bag, which I like. I like the mixed bag. I like how they do that. Like there's one scene where you get to see it. He stabs someone right through the neck. And then the next scene, you walk in and you just see someone who's pinned up against the wall with a knife. So it's kind of like you get both.
Yep. And I think it was a very good modernizing and a very good extension of the mythology of the original. And like I said, for me, it's the second best in the entire series, aside from the original.
I agree. I think if you just watch the original and this one, I think it's a great marathon.
But yeah, as you mentioned, it's certainly not a flawless film, but it's a pretty damn good film. And if you're a fan of Michael Myers, I think you would really enjoy seeing him back.
Fun. It's a great movie. The reason I'm so picky is because I've been such a fan of these series and I just had, when I found that they were like really going to invest the money to do this and get John Carpenter involved in it, and I was like, all right, let's go. You're going to have a perfect reimagining of this iconic film. And there were things I think that just dropped the ball on a little bit. I mean, it's worth seeing. I've seen this movie multiple times, and I'm going to see it again. I enjoy seeing it. So, outside of my nitpicking, I do love this film.
Yeah, looking back, you're like, well, David Gordon Green. When I saw it, I'm like, holy cow, this is an awesome extension of the original, and I like that they forgot most of the, not great movies in between. I was going to say garbage, but it's not all garbage, but it's certainly of a lesser quality.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are just fun to watch, like whatever.
Yeah. But now looking back, it really makes you wonder, because Halloween Kills was not nearly as good. Halloween Ends was not nearly as good. And then David Gordon Green attempted to do the exact same thing recently with The Exorcist. And you told me it was one of the worst horror movies you've ever seen.
I went and saw it in the theaters, and it's an hour and 50 minutes, and about an hour and 30 in, a couple got up and walked out. And as I was walking out, I saw an older gentleman in front of me, and I was like, "Hey, maybe we should go see a real horror movie now." And he looked at me, he's like, "That was that was very disappointing." I sighed like 4 times watching that movie. I couldn't even take it. It's bad on every level.
Yeah. So you almost look back now with more history and say, was this luck or lightning in a bottle, or
I think it was lightning in a bottle, and then I think they tried to force the rest.
Yeah, but yeah, again, in just looking at this movie, I think it's an excellent continuation of the series, and
agreed. I agree.
A good modernization, and I really enjoyed it, and I actually think I enjoyed it more this time than I did the first time I watched it.
Yeah, and the things like I said originally, the things I did enjoy, I enjoyed even more. And the things that frustrated me more. You know what I mean? So it was both. But there's some things that are done flawlessly in this movie, like the cinematography and the score and some kills. And there's just it's a great movie, so I recommend it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, title of the movie is Halloween, and it's a perfect wrap to our Happy Halloween episode. That is our show for this week. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I am Jerry. That's Matt. We'll see you next time with another new topic and a couple more movies to talk about. We'll see you then.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and